Chapter 58, Holy Courtyard of Shui Yu. When Lu Fei heard Nan Gongling's speech, she heaved a sigh. Actually, she could understand the difficult position in which Nan Gongling found himself. Yet, she was concerned about her father who also had to bear huge responsibilities. She was really trying her best to help him by any means possible. Patriarch, Nan Gongling, building the Holy Courtyard of Shui Yu as an order of His Majesty. Could you refuse to obey His Majesty's orders? Said a young man who was next to Lu Fei while staring at Nan Gongling. When did I say that I wanted to disobey His Majesty's orders? Nan Gongling replied coldly while glancing at the young man. He then said, building the Holy Courtyard of Shui Yu is a project which I support wholeheartedly. I have no choice but to let a few outstanding disciples go and practice there. He paused for a moment and then continued in a cold tone. Besides, since when did you start to think it was good manners to poke your nose into other people's affairs and make criticisms? A little prince like you, what do you intend to do? Do you want me to call your father, Duan Tian Lang, and have him teach you some manners? In the continent of the 9 clouds, elders had to be respected. Nobles also had to be respected, which was especially true of those with high status as they were extremely strong. These days, the Duan clan had become the imperial clan because they were extremely strong. The Duan clan had become the strongest clan in the entire Shui Yu country. It wasn't just a matter of how much territory was controlled, it was a fact that they were the strongest. However, the Duan clan still had to humble themselves to the sects and act politely when speaking with them. Nan Gongling wasn't going to submit himself to a little prince of the Duan clan. It did not matter to him how strong the Duan clan was, his sect was not something that could be looked down upon by anyone. You Nan Gongling, I will tell my father about this. Said the young man coldly while giving a glare filled with evil intentions. Tell him whatever you like, replied Nan Gongling while looking relaxed and not surprised. I heard that little Fei Fei came back. At that moment, a voice came from outside of the room in the temple. It was Protector Bei who had just arrived while striding forward with head high. Grandfather Bei. When Lu Fei saw Protector Bei, she stood up. Protector Bei was actually her father's master. Little Fei, how's your father doing? Protector Bei was looking at Lu Fei with affectionate eyes. The great elders and protectors of the sect rarely had direct disciples. When they did, they developed deep and strong ties with them which would last a lifetime. He's still in Duanren City, said Lu Fei making a wry smile. Sighed Protector Bei shaking his head and making a wry smile as well. Little Fei, what brings you here? If you are looking for disciples, then I have an amazing person in mind. You will definitely be happy. One person? Said Lu Fei making a wry smile again. Didn't your father leave the sect alone in the past? You don't need too many people. It's useless to take too many. Said Protector Bei while shaking his head. Grandfather, who are you talking about? Lu Fei's eyes had a glimmer of hope. When she heard the old man, she had the feeling he was talking about somebody extremely important. Could it be? You will know when the right moment comes. Make those guys leave first. After the elite disciple exam of the Yun Hai sect, I will personally accompany the person to the imperial city. Said Protector Bei while looking at the crowd of troops behind Lu Fei. Alright, said Lu Fei while nodding. In the mountains where he had first met Lu Fei, Lin Feng was sitting in a cave and cultivating. The chi of heaven and earth looked like a cocoon which was surrounding him as he continued to cultivate. Lin Feng's body was wrapped up in the cocoon like chi. That white-colored chi looked like an extremely dense fog which had almost become solid. At that moment, a terrifying attractive force emerged out of the deepest parts of Lin Feng's body which enabled the chi of heaven and earth that surrounding his body to penetrate into his dantian. Inside Lin Feng's body, a powerful milky white chi was circulating and looked as if it was boiling. The strong chi which circulated in and out of Lin Feng's body was extremely pure. After a long time, the chi of heaven and earth was still uninterruptedly revolving around Lin Feng's body. At that moment, Lin Feng stopped cultivating. He opened his eyes and had a big smile on his face. This purity technique has such strange effects on the body, but it definitely helped consolidate my cultivation basics. Now, I am much stronger than before, I can utilize my power much better than before. I can control my breathing much better than before as well. Lin Feng thought that thanks to his increased breathing abilities, he would be able to endlessly fight. The continuous explosive strength required a great power and of course every fight required control over one's breathing. Lin Feng stood up, looked at a wall at the entrance of the cave, then thrust his palm forward into the air and whispered, 8 strikes of desolation. Accompanying his words, a strong and explosive attack crashed into the wall in front of him. Boom, 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 boom. The entire cave was vibrating. 7 clear and distinct marks could be seen on the wall which Lin Feng had taken as a target. As expected, 8 strikes of desolation is an extremely strong attack. Lin Feng was smiling. 8 strikes of desolation was one of the lowest skills of the Zan level. It could have up to 8 strikes. If a cultivator managed to achieve 5 strikes, that was already extremely strong and proved that he had great talent. If he could manage to go up to 6 strikes, he was definitely a rare talent, but achieving 7 strikes could only be done by a real genius. Lin Feng wanted to achieve 8 strikes. Achieving 8 strikes would fill the entire atmosphere with power. However, achieving the 8th strike was extremely difficult and only real geniuses could achieve it. It usually required a lot of battle experience to fully comprehend the skill and master it to perfection. Zon-level skills were not easy to practice, and the higher the level and strength, the more difficult they became. You are listening to Peerless Martial God audio on light novel Aloud. However, as far as Lin Feng was concerned, he could see no problem with practicing. When releasing his dark spirit, it gave him the amazing ability of increased comprehension and understanding. After one day, he had been able to master 7 strikes. He just had to practice a bit more and he would be able to master the 8 strikes of desolation skill to perfection and achieve all 8 strikes when using the skill. But Lin Feng wasn't satisfied at that moment. Elite disciples had nothing in common with ordinary disciples, and Lin Feng wanted to climb above all others. During the elite disciple exam of the Yun Hai sect, there could be a real genius within the disciples. Lin Feng didn't know how it was going to be, but the stronger his competition was, the better. Sword of Nirvana would greatly improve his strength in a very short time as well. The Sword of Nirvana skill was actually a sword skill with 3 strikes which would grow in strength with the higher mastery of the sword. 1 strike could mean death, 3 strikes would mean certain death. A deadly sword, a fatal sword, a lonely sword, it could annihilate everything that stood in its way, so it had annihilated everything in its path. It had nothing left that was its equal and was therefore lonely. While reading the Sword of Nirvana skill book, Lin Feng was lost in thought. He looked at the text in the stances while gradually absorbing all of the knowledge. Lin Feng could rapidly understand everything. Lin Feng had started to release his spirit. Lin Feng's world became a world filled with darkness again. The earth, the sky, not a single color or light could be seen. There was only darkness surrounding everything. Lin Feng was calm and unperturbed in that world of darkness. Nothing could disturb him and he was extremely calm. Lin Feng closed his eyes and the image of a person appeared in his brain. That person looked like a holy man and didn't stop wielding his long sword. 1 strike, another strike, repeating the same movement over and over again, he was practicing the Sword of Nirvana. The deadly sword. After a long time, Lin Feng opened his eyes. The twinkling sword lacerating the air disappeared. 1 step, 1 strike, the deadly sword. Boom. The entire cave was shaking and trembling. The sword had left a large scar in the wall of the cave. The cave was shaking and trembling more and more, the rocks had been crushed into nothing but dust. Lin Feng was stupefied. Lin Feng had quickly retreated from the cave, and not long after, the cave collapsed on itself with a violent rumble. The first strike was already so deadly. Combined with the 8 strikes of desolation, he had completely destroyed the cave. He had only mastered the first strike of the Sword of Nirvana and the 7th strike of the 8 strikes of desolation, yet he had already collapsed a cave. These were indeed powerful skills. Lin Feng recalled his spirit back into his body. He was very excited. Zon-level skills were definitely extremely powerful, as expected. Was the power of all his skills going to be so incredible? What Lin Feng didn't know was that the first strike was already devastating because he also knew how to control forces. He had unconsciously controlled the sword force at a very advanced level and combined it with his strike. That deadly sword required a perfect fusion of his sword chi, mastery of the skill and sword force. These 3 elements had to be in a perfect symbiotic fusion. Lin Feng's ability to comprehend and use the sword force so freely had made things much easier for him. That is why it wasn't that difficult for him to practice the skill. If it had been someone else, it would have been much more difficult, maybe even impossible to learn the skill in such a short period. Lin Feng had come out from the cave, turned around and looked around him at the mountains where the sun rays shone through. He could see someone walking in the distance. When he recognized the person, Lin Feng felt a sudden urge to take revenge which he suppressed. Lu Fei. Lin Feng was surprised. He didn't understand what she was doing there. She had had the opportunity to attack him before and she hadn't seized it. Why, bastard, you took control over my territory. Today, you and I are enemies. You are the only one who has humiliated me to such an extent. Lu Fei was staring at Lin Feng with a deep and bitter hatred for him. Since she was a child, her father had taught her to stand alone and be independent. She had always been like that. She was more of a tomboy and didn't really act like a girl in the slightest. Besides, she had gone through a lot of hardships which made her even more proud and ambitious. But Lu Fei hadn't expected Lin Feng to be so shameless. He was a voyeur and had pounced naked onto her only to be beaten back, and then when they next fought, he had dared to say he wasn't interested in her anymore only because he had made great progress with his cultivation. Then, he had dared to steal her precious and beloved territory. How could she not be angry? Now, I have broken through to the Ling Qi layer, we will see if you still dare act so insolent towards me. Lu Fei thought tyrannically. End of chapter 58. Hope you guys enjoy the chapter. Please consider subscribing and hit that bell button for future updates.